Welcome. My name is Teresa Pelham. Today we're coming to you from the air-conditioned comfort of the Simsbury Public Library. Today we're going to meet Eshani Medha, and she is a Simsbury resident, a college sophomore, and an author. Welcome.
Thank you.
First, before we talk about your book, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm 19 years old, and I'm a student at NYU right now. And besides writing, I've always been very interested in music and acting, but writing has always been my primary passion.
What are you studying?
I'm studying creative writing, but also politics at NYU.
Okay. So you wrote a book at the age of 17?
Yeah, I started when I was 16 years old.
Okay. And when you started writing this book, did you think that you'd actually get it published?
I was kind of very focused on finishing it, and the publishing part came as a gift from my grandparents. So it wasn't something that I was aiming towards.
So you had this idea and you just kind of kept writing?
Yeah. How it kind of began for me is that I was actually in Prague on a school trip with my chorus. And we were in this very beautiful garden villa area. And there was this really nice little house. And I sort of started wondering, who lives in that house? And I thought of a professor for whatever reason. And then I started thinking about a student. And I was like, what kind of story can I create from this? And I sort of rewrote the beginning again and again in my head until I finally got something that made sense to me. And from then on, it was pretty easy. It just kind of kept flowing.
So did you have help along the way? Did you show it to your friends and to your family?
I showed it mostly to my mom. Other than that, I kind of kept it to myself because I didn't want to get too many ideas from other people because I wanted the story really to be my own at the time. And after that, I sort of showed it mostly to my mom for editing, but a couple things here and there to other people.
So what's the basic theme of the story?
Measurements, the basic theme is finding yourself, but there are a lot of strands that go into that, such as how do you find yourself when society is telling you to be something else, or when your loved ones want you to be something else, and how do you balance everything? So it's not just finding yourself as an individual, it's also finding yourself in the scheme of a whole world.
But this is fiction, so
Yes.
What's the story about then?
Well, it has to do with this high schooler named Peter Saunders, and he has a very close relationship with his English teacher, which becomes construed as something worse than it is, something scandalous. And they live in a pretty conservative town, so it becomes a very big deal for them. And he's sort of on the way of wanting to leave anyway, so he does, and he starts trying to find himself in Boston. Meanwhile, we have the teacher who's obviously going through a difficult time in the town. And you see her journey and his journey parallel, and you'll see how they diverge from each other, but also do converge at times.
Is it based on a true story?
What it's based on is my own experiences living in a town and observing people. But none of the characters are based on specific people. And the situation is definitely not based on anything that's happened.
Okay, and you made up this town?
Yes, completely.
Okay, but you did grow up in Simsbury.
I did.
So how did that influence the way you wrote this?
Well, the thing about Simsbury is that they're very, very supportive, especially of the arts here. I can remember I went to Hot Meadow Nursery School, and there were so many books that were given to me and stories. And then I remember specifically third grade, every afternoon, we would have this time where we would write stories, and all the room mothers would come and edit our books for us and put them together and bind them. And I remember really loving writing at that time. And then throughout the years, I had a great sixth grade teacher who encouraged me a lot to write. And as I grew older, I had teachers who would sit down and talk to me and say, this sentence is not right. This is not how it should be written, especially Ms. Miller, who's been teaching in the high school for a very long time, was there. But all of my high school teachers were like that. And then I also had the Simsbury Library, where we are here, and they were always helpful suggesting books and things like that, because I feel like as a writer you need to be able to read before you can write, and that was a really big thing.
So what age did you start writing?
I started writing very young. My mom would have me sit down and write poems with her, and I remember there was one about the pine trees in the backyard reminding me of peacocks, and there was one about a patch of grass that everybody needed to sit on to feel better. And I always wanted to write a novel. That was my big thing. I started second grade being like, I want to write a novel. And obviously that was kind of a big dream for me until Measurements, which was about 10th grade when I really started being able to finish a novel. But I've always been writing. I did a lot of short scenes and vignettes, and I dabbled in poetry. And obviously in school we had creative writing classes also.
Because this doesn't seem like a 10th grader's work. This seems like a little bit more advanced. I mean, would you recommend this for a 10th grader to read?
Yeah, I definitely would. I think that the ideas are something that if you can actually instill in a younger person would be great, because as they grow older, if they can remember some of the things that I tried to write about, maybe they'll be able to shape how they want to live their lives with a little bit more of a set mindset about it.
So we heard about your writing process in Prague. What is your typical writing process?
What I said about worrying about the beginning a lot is generally how it works for me, because I can't write anything unless I feel very connected to it. And I find that I'm connected to it if it stays in my head for more than 2 months. So as I'm writing something else, I try and keep an idea in there that'll kind of cook while I'm writing. And actually recently I've learned to love drafting more. When I was younger, I was very much, okay, it's my first draft, can it be perfect? But now I don't really feel that way, and I write and then I let it go and I let it sit for a little while. My last short story I drafted 8 times. So I love drafting now, and I like giving it to people to read and seeing how they feel about it, whether or not I take their opinion or not. It's always good to know what the readers are thinking.
And your kids will never believe you that when you say that, because I try to tell kids that when I go into schools, and they always think that their writing is perfect the first time around.
Definitely not, because sometimes you even have to rearrange the scenes. Just even that can be a problem, and then there are moments that aren't as strong as the things that are around it, and you need to make everything else strong. So,
and then letting other people read it, I think, is really important.
It's hard to let go.
Well, they're doing that more now in schools. They're having writing groups, so the kids will write something, and then they let their peers read it.
We have that a lot at NYU, and it's great because you're in this classroom with about 15 kids, and you feel usually pretty comfortable with them. The first time, people have a little bit of difficulty with it. But it's the whole, you stay quiet and let people just talk about your work, which is really cool because you're not allowed to defend it. And I like that because I don't want to be defending my work. I want the writing to stand as it is. And I think that's a really great lesson for anybody who wants to write.
I think it's harder to be critical of someone else's work than to be opening up yourself to somebody else.
You do?
Yeah.
I think what's the most difficult is that you want to be honest, but you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. So I think it's the most important thing is for you to pick people who you trust, who you know will tell you the truth, and to give them the ability to tell you the truth.
So we're telling all of the 3rd graders out there, yes, let people read your work. It does help, though.
It does.
Someone's always going to come up with a better
idea.
Yeah. So how else has your family been involved in your writing?
My mom has always been very, very involved, and she still is. She gets emails every week that's like, sorry, you need to read this too, but I need some help with this piece or something like that. And then the rest of my family, my grandparents live in Simsbury, as does my dad and my siblings, and I get inspiration from them, even little kids running around, and always just a lot of support. Nobody ever said, oh, you want to do creative writing? That's a bad field to go into, which is another important thing. let people follow their dreams. Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting path to take. Most people are going towards the practical, get the job, and go for business administration.
It's true, and that's partially why I am involved in politics, because not only do I think it's important to have another field of study that you can bring into your writing, but also as some sort of backup, maybe. But creative writing is what I love, and I know with a lot of hard work, and I'm in a great place because I'm in New York City. So.
Yeah, you've got some good material there.
Yeah.
So now, where are you in terms of your writing now? What are you working on now?
I'm kind of going towards short story right now, which had never been something I like to do because I generally take ideas and make them bigger. Yep. And so being able to keep things small and getting at the very minute details is something really new for me. So I just finished something last semester, and I'm working on something else now. And I have another idea about a librarian, believe it or not.
Oh,
so
nice.
We'll see how that works out.
So do a lot of these start out as homework assignments?
Generally, no.
Did the book?
The book did not at all.
Okay.
The book, for me, if I don't write, I don't feel very comfortable or happy because it's just something, it's a way of expressing myself, and also not always myself, but something that I observe and something maybe that's bothering me even. And I've really gotten into the habit of writing now too, so if I'm not writing, I feel like something's really missing from my life. So sometimes I'll sit there and stare at a blank Microsoft Word page and be like, come on, something, come out.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't, but
once you get that beginning going,
then it's good.
Easier.
Yeah.
What kind of things do you read?
My first book that made me want to be a writer was Margaret Atwood's The Cat's Eye. Mm-hmm. And it was, I guess, my first adult book, sort of. Mm-hmm. And I was just amazed by all the things she could pack in with the description and the characters. It was just very beautifully written. And I try to read as much as I can. So I will read The Da Vinci Code. I will read Harry Potter. I will read something by Junot Diaz. I will read whatever comes my way, because all writers have different strengths. And I love reading even what my peers are writing, because we have a new way of looking at things. You'll notice that a lot of writing doesn't have a ton of technology. It doesn't have Facebook, that kind of stuff. But people who are writing now, who are younger, that's a part of our lives. Mm-hmm. So we have to write about those things. And so it's just a different type of writing. So I think it's great to read from all ages, things like that. But I'm currently reading Lolita.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, how did the self-publishing process work for you? We could compare notes on this.
Well, I will say my grandparents took care of a lot of it, because they were giving it to me as a kind of a graduation gift. So I'm not sure about everything, but for me, what was great was that I had a lot of ability to sit there and say, this is how I want the cover to look, and mm-hmm. this is how I want the formatting, and the back of it, and things like that. So they were very helpful, because there was a lot of emailing back and forth. They're not located, obviously, in Connecticut.
Yep.
And then when it's finished, you get this beautiful product, and you feel great about it.
Because I know that a lot of people that go through the traditional route, it's a little bit harder, because they have to give up a lot of that control.
Yes, they do.
You knew exactly what
I wanted
to get.
It was my first novel, and I was proud of finishing it mm-hmm. and all of that. So in the future, we'll see what route I take. I might want to go that slightly more difficult route and give up some control and things like that.
Yeah. Well, then you don't have to worry so much about the marketing part
exactly.
of it. And so how are we doing that? How are you marketing it?
When the book came out, I was applying for college. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine that I wasn't doing a ton of marketing. Mm-hmm. And now I'm in college. I'm still not. I'm very, very proud of it. And at some point, I'm sure that I'll come back to the marketing aspects. But for now, it's just nice to have something. And I'm working just a lot on the writing aspect. I don't necessarily want to be the most famous writer out there yet. I want to, just work on it. Yeah.
So did you want to read a passage from the book?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is more towards the end of the book.
Okay.
Peter searches for his own name in a moment of conceitedness, but also in a moment of necessity. A necessity to see his own life expressed in a myriad of web pages. There are Peter Saunders who are not actually him. He calls them impostors in his own mind, though perhaps they are no more impostor than he is. But there are also pages detailing his track records from years past to the present, so that he can see his improvement. Seconds, which at the time seemed momentous. Minute details, which perhaps are still imperative. The West Haven Post, an inconsequential newspaper, cites honor roll achievements, random prizes won, stories from his Boy Scout days. There are broken links and photos. There are stories that he doesn't even remember. There are stories that he does remember. He remembers the pressure from his parents, from his teachers, from himself. And then there are the password-protected links, those from the Board of Education, those that he absolutely cannot open, those that are his to see, for they are marked with his name and Mrs. Williams. And yet, like a heavily protected secret, they are impenetrable. There are news reports, too, of whose existence he was absolutely unaware of. They reek of his parents' carefully picked words. The titles, in bold, read, High School Student Peter Saunders Disappears, and underneath his picture, a smiling senior shot marks the pages. The articles quickly detail his disappearance, giving July 2nd as the actual date. Apparently, strong pressures and difficult relationships with authority were probably the catalysts for his departure. His friends are quoted, and the reporters remind the readers that Mrs. Saunders had tears in her eyes during the interview, while Mr. Saunders' frequent nose-blowing seemed to be a subtle sign of his grief. Scrolling, Peter finds another page that encompasses a short list of volunteers for the Boston Children's Program. He is listed toward the bottom of the page as a new volunteer. Peter rubs his eyes and clicks through various pages, trying to find something else, something less controlled by his parents, his mistakes, or his triumphs. Finally, he does. It is his informal English essay, an assignment to be between 100 and 200 words on the future, which was once posted online almost thoughtlessly. "You were born with wings, why crawl through life," says Rumi. When I look through my life, I see that this thought hasn't been followed. There are people failing to reach their highest potentials, and with this they bring others down with them. There are those who try, and they are torn down. This life, the parts I can see, seem to be built upon being average. My dream, my one singular dream, is to be the person who can bring freedom to life. I have made the commitment to this dream. I will not stand down, and I will not let my own personal issues come in the way. This is what brings great people down from their pedestals. If the human race could use their wisdom and intelligence in a less revolting, corrupted manner, we would be truly exalted, not only in our own thoughts, but in the thoughts of whatever universe lies around us. And if the rest of us are given wings, I have been given a transporter, technology far above wings, and because of this, I will persevere. It is my responsibility to the world. Peter Saunders, October 2002. He has found it, his dream, his calling, the thing people look for in every moment of their lives. He knew it long ago. And going to New York City or any other place will just be an escape. Peter stares out the window. Boston is beautiful in the night. From the road comes a pumping drumbeat from a car. The lights are beginning to twinkle, as are the voices of college students enamored with each other. There is life here. Even the stars, perhaps almost invisible, are present somehow. There is a sound of breaking glass, of a dog howling, of a piano player practicing, of Rory laughing, of his own heartbeat. He closes his eyes and pretends he is back in West Haven. The sounds remain, but are transformed to quieter, more subdued secrets. Broken sounds, unable to use their full potential. Peter sighs. He will say goodbye to the city. He will return to the dull, insipid environment of West Haven with a new mission and new knowledge. And he will remember that each thing deserves attention and care, and he can provide this. He knows that he can. Because, as the man in the cafe once told him, there is always hope, and there is always beauty, and there is always life.
So how can we promote writing with children?
I think we have to start young, first of all, and obviously the reading aspects are important, but I think sometimes what happens in the school systems is that we read a lot and we write essays about what we read, and we don't get to be creative about writing. And I don't necessarily think everybody's going to love writing or that everybody should be doing it, but it's a good way to express ourselves. When I was in 11th grade in high school, we did a free writing exercise, and a lot of kids were like, I don't want to sit here and write. And then we took 5 minutes, and everyone was like, I feel really good. And that was my first period class. So everyone was really tired even, and they felt good by writing. So I think bringing in the creative aspects would be great. Maybe more after-school clubs if we want to target people who are very interested. But I think every English class could take a couple minutes and say, let's just write and get our feelings out about what's going on and share if we want to and get that community sense of writing.
I know that a lot of kids are asked to write in school a lot, and they have a hard time coming up with ideas. So what I've talked to my son about is coming up with a list of ideas to write about. So when he is asked to sit down quietly for 10 minutes to write about something, he can pull out his little list and say, oh, right, I can talk about the time that the cat was in the tree for 24 hours.
I think it depends what kind of writing you're looking towards. Sometimes what I've done in classes, it's kind of what's on your mind right now. Because sometimes the best stories come from what's on your mind.
Sure.
But sometimes if there's something eating at you, that's an awesome technique to use too. So I think that there are a lot of different angles that teachers can go at, and you don't have to do the same thing all year. You can change it up.
Sure. So I want to know something about this cover. Tell me a little bit about this.
So the concept was mine. Putting together was not mine. Okay. But basically what there is on there is there's a hand holding a magnifying glass, and there's an ocean. And for me, the ocean represents sort of possibility. There's so much going on. We don't know what goes on under the ocean. We don't know where the horizon is, kind of those things. And I feel like people look at little bits of the ocean, which is what I tried to represent here with a magnifying glass. This person has a magnifying glass right at their horizon, right at the tip of the ocean, but they're not looking at the whole thing. And maybe if we took that magnifying glass away, we could open ourselves up to some more ideas and feeling more comfortable around people and maybe feeling more comfortable with ourselves.
It sounds like this is a bigger philosophical story than a story about a teacher and a student.
That's where I tried to go with it. I don't want people to think that it's some kind of love story, because it's not. It's really about two people who got stuck in a bad situation, and that propelled them forward. And hopefully not everybody needs a bad situation to be propelled forward, but sometimes that's how it is.
Okay. All right. Well, great. I think this was a great interview. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.